Hello, folks, and welcome to today's session on Sage 300 Tips and Tricks. My name is Richard Jang, and I'll be your presenter for today's session. I'm one of the product owners for Sage 300, looking after the design and implementation with our development staff for Sage 300 features. So, whether you're just starting out to use Sage 300 or you've got many years of experience, hopefully in today's session, will give you some ideas as to how to take advantage of some of the new features that have been implemented in Sage 300 so that to make your day-to-day journey and use of Sage 300 more productive. What we're going to do is start off by taking a look at, well, how do I know what flavor or what am I using in terms of my Sage 300? Now, why is that important? Well, the reason why that's important is that you may be in discussions with your partners, you may be in discussions with our support team, and they want to get some background information about your installation of Sage 300. Okay, and so let's quickly take a look at how about we go about quickly finding that out. Well, in the main menu of Sage 300, what you will see on there is basically at the very top a little button called the About button. Okay. And so let me show you a screen share in here for that. So in the About button, if I click on that, you're going to have two additional buttons on here. One's called System Info and one's called Licenses. Okay, so what those are going to provide is additional information with respect to the applications you have installed, the product update and version numbers and everything. Let me just bring that back here. So if I click on the System Info button, what it shows me on here basically is, I've got the 2021 version, the product updates installed on here, the different modules I have activated, and the applicable updates on here. So this type of information is important because we do release our product updates every quarter, which have basic additional features in them or defects that are fixed on there. So it's important to know that. Now, as we're already in this area here, you also will have a help button. If you click down on the help button, one area I want to point you to is the one with respect to product documents. Okay, so with respect to product documents, what that does is that brings up our link to our online repository of documents for Sage 300. Okay, as you see here, it's broken down by the different versions that you have. If I click on the drop-down link on here, you'll see it talks about the release notes, so it tells you about new features are there. If you're looking for user guides, if you click down at user guides, it shows you a list of all the different modules, all the different user guides that you can basically download as PDFs on here for to use. Okay. Now, and if you also use the different languages in Sage 300, you'll also see on here you've got documentation available for the French language, documentation available for Chinese languages in there. Okay, so all that's available to use. Right? Okay, well, now that you've got an idea of what version of that of Sage 300 you got installed, let's take a look at some other things to make life a bit easier, and that's shortcut keys. Okay. Now, in the PowerPoint slide deck here, I've listed some of the common shortcut keys that you have available that you can use and pull up on here. I'm not going to basically demonstrate and go through every one of them, but here's a quick list of the common ones to use. Okay, I will show you this very last one down here about activating the calculator. So if you are in any field in Sage 300 and it's a numeric field, so as an example here, I'm going to go to the general ledger journal entries. Okay, and I've got basically a numeric field in here, debit amount 30. If I hit any of the plus or minus keys on my keyboard, that'll bring up the calculator. Okay, so here we are. And with the calculator, if I do some calculation and whatever, make some changes to this, so say I increasing this by 10%, right? So I'll multiply that by 1.1. Okay, times, right? So there we go. It's 33, and I can paste that back to my field, right? And so don't have to do a copy and paste whatever. Hit the paste button, and it's back there, ready for me to go. So that's a pretty especially when you're doing calculations and everything, something that's easy to use in that. And so here we go, the screenshot for that. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This one is called a finder and starting on a filter for it. Now, why might you want to do something like that? Well, let's take an example here. In customers, as an example, say I want to take a look and only see all my active customers. Okay, so let's actually go to customers here. And what we can do here is click on my Finder. And in my Finder, what I do now, if I click on Global Settings, I go to the selection where it says Go to Filter first. Okay, and then after I do this, what I do is I set a criteria to show me basically only the active users in my list. So what that means is that it will show me, only those customers that are basically dealing with me, and all the other ones that I'm not no longer dealing with, they're removed from the list. So it shortens down the list of items that I need to see. Okay. So that's another item on here. Okay, and starting multiple copies of the program. Now, why might you want to do something like this? Well, what will happen is that you have the ability to start multiple copies of these, and this is an example of document inquiry, right? I may want to take a look at multiple flavors of documents. Specific invoice numbers, specific credit notes if I'm tracking things. And we have the ability to do that. And this ability is not just limited to document inquiry, but is available in any of our screens. So as an example, I'm going to stay with customers for the moment. All I need to do is I right-click on customers. And when I do that, if I click on properties, you have this checkbox here that lets you start multiple copies of the program. So once I check that, I can start basically the AR customer screen or any other screens multiple times. So if I want to do multiple entries in terms of invoices, in terms of GL transactions, I can basically work with that to do that. Okay. Now, who is using Sage 300 now, and why is this something that you want to take a look at? Well, if you're doing an upgrade, or if you're trying to see who's basically signed on, or if you basically may have run out of licenses and see who's there, you can get an idea as to who is using your Sage 300 program and also basically what different modules and everything that they're using. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is look at current users. Now, where do I find current users? Well, if you go to, once again, your help button here, and you'll see basically this menu choice that says current users. Okay. Now you notice right now the only person signed in is the administrator, which is me. Okay. Now let me just go and sign in as another user. And in this particular case, I'm going to sign in here. Let me see here at Mary. Okay. So I'm going to basically sign in as Mary on a different company. Okay, so here I am, Mary. I'm also signing in here. I go OK. Right. So you notice that when that happens is that in terms of my current users, I'll see that Mary Smith is signed in. Okay. And here is Mary Smith's screen. Okay, how do we know that? Well, at the very top, it says the user is Mary Smith. Okay. Now, let's just say Mary goes into General Ledger and open up GL accounts here. Okay, so Mary's opened up GL accounts on here. Okay, and if I go back to my current user screen now, and if I click on Show Screens Users Have Opened, okay, you'll see on here that Mary Smith has basically signed on, into the GL screen and using on that. Okay. And the other ones you can look at on here is that if you have people who have logged in with macros or other programs, you can do that and see there. And we give you a quick snapshot as to how many licenses you have, how many people are signed on in terms of the classic desktop, and how many people are signed in terms of the web desktop. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, the next one here is that, sometimes you'll have multiple companies, multiple databases set up. You've got them running on your thing. How do you distinguish between them? Well, one of the things you can do is that you can assign basically a color border to these. Okay, and that's basically done in our basically database setup program, right? So in your database setup program on here, right? If I select one of these companies, I'll select this one here. If I click on Edit, one of the things they'll allow me to do is that when I'm here is that it will allow me to specify a color. Right? So right now, as an example, you see it says no color. if I click on where it says color, it opens up this color palette for me, and I can choose then if I want a specific color to be set up for that company. Okay, so just by using this different color schemes that I want, I can determine, quickly at a glance which company I may be signed on to. Now, the next one is dealing with list of companies, right? Printing list of companies. So when you're in the database setup, and if you go into there, you can basically print a list of the different companies you have. It'll give you information with respect to name of the companies. It'll give you information with respect to how they're set up and everything. So let's just quickly do this, and I'll show you. So we just go print, and that basically brings up my report on here. So here's the report for the list of the different companies. Tells you the database type, the SQL Server, who the ID is that using to sign on, and whether you've got security and different things implemented. Right? So you can get a quick glance of all the different setups you have for your company. Okay. The next one is this idea of restricting a list of companies. Okay, now you notice here I got two users. One is Mary and one is Bill. And you notice on here in terms of this list, Mary has basically access to all the different companies I have, and Bill has only access to a certain number of companies. Okay. Why is that the case? And once again, how does this play? Well, think about this. You may have Mary, who may be the controller. Mary, as the controller, should have access to all the companies in here, right? Whereas Bill may just be in the accounts receivable area, and all he is responsible for is looking after customers in companies B and E in accounts receivable. So therefore, we don't want to basically have Bill see all the different companies that I have set up. So it comes down to this idea of segregation of duty, that you will only make available the information that the employee needs to get their job done. Right? Now, this restricting list of companies, if you want further information, we have that posted in one of our knowledge base articles on here, so you can grab it from there. Okay, in terms of the setup and all that for it. This restricting list of companies is also available for our web screens. So if you are using our web screens, this also applies in our web screens as well. Now, getting data into and out of Sage 300. So you may have used the import and export functions in Sage 300 in the past. Now in there, let me just click on here, and we'll take this example here, customers. You have this, or I'm just going to do accounts here. When you're in accounts, and if I want to do an export, okay, and we'll do profile. You see at the very bottom here, once you've selected, what it is you want to export, this little button that says Save Script. Okay. Now, what does that do? Well, okay, let's just take a quick example here. I'm going to make this just a single CSV file. Now, right now, by default, it's going to export for me all the different fields in my GL accounts. Okay. Well, if I want to basically minimize the number of fields I want to bring in, okay, what I can do is, as an example, if I'm not interested in status, post account, quantities allowed as an example, and if I save the script, the next time that I do an export, what will happen is that it will remember this. Okay, so I do not have to basically, uncheck these boxes every single time. So that's the idea behind saving a script. Okay, so once you've got that set up, you don't have to repeat that for your next export. Now, the opposite side of this is importing data. Okay, well, one of the items in terms of, let me close this. One of the things that we hear about in terms of importing data is, we also have this separate utility available if you want to grab information from payroll products. So specifically, we designed this for some of our customers who are using payroll, where they need to get basically payroll detailed transaction information from them. It's not available within the product itself, so we created this program, the download for that. It's available in this KB article. Okay, and it'll basically export out with permissions, and you have to have security in order to get to it. Not everyone can. Download all that to a CSV file where you can manipulate that and excel on that. Okay, so let's coming back to getting data into Sage 300, Sage 300 import, right? Well, one of the things here is that if you've done any work with import export on Sage 300, you may realize there's a lot of fields in there. And the question always comes down to, well, which fields do I need to bring in? What's important? Well, so what we did is that we created some import templates. Okay, and those are found basically in your shared data folder under another folder called import templates. Okay, so if I quickly take a look at this as an example here, here's my shared data folder. Here are my import templates. So if I click on my import templates, here's a list of some of the common ones that people ask about. Let's take a look at GL journal entries as an example. Okay, so very quickly, let's fire that up. We'll open that up. And what we have on here is basically the basic information needed in order to set up, go up here to the top, to basically set up an import for it. Okay, so just the bare minimum number of fields. Okay, and the idea behind this is just to make it easier for you when you're bringing in data and import in there. Within each Sage 300 installation, we have the Sage Intelligence reporting product. Okay, now we have some standard reports that are provided with Sage 300. But in addition to that, in the Sage Intelligence community, we also have a lot of customized reports that the Sage Intelligence team have put together, or reports that have been submitted by our customers, our users. Right? So in that link on here, to get to that, here's the report utility to let you download it and grab that. Let's maybe just take a quick look at where are we here? Sage Intelligence reporting. Great, let's do this here. Okay. So in here, here are a series of additional reports available in addition to the ones that come standard with the Sage 300 installation. So project job costing as an example, the standard installation doesn't include a set of job costing reports. However, in the link here, you'll see that you can download a series of project and job costing reports from the Sage Intelligence community and the link that's there. Okay, so you can grab that from there. Okay, let's go next on here. Now, in addition to that link, we also have a series of PDFs and information about it. One is that if you want to convert any of the general ledger financial reports to Sage Intelligence, that information is available there. Free ebooks on using Sage Intelligence, and the community site where there's a lot of tips and tricks, not just on Sage Intelligence, but also in using Excel and manipulating the data that's there. Okay, so it gives you a good overview of different items on here. Okay, so now I'm gonna segue out of the idea of reporting and looking at some of the things that we put into our web screens, right? So you may be aware, in addition to the standard desktop product of Sage 300, we also basically have a web version of these programs, right? And I'm just going to talk through a few items on here with these screens. So here's basically your login on the Sage 300 side for web screens. We sign into there. Okay. And then once we sign in, you're going to see basically some of the different widgets available that you can use. Okay. And where are we signing in here? Why am I not signing in? Oh, okay, so there we are. So there are the different widgets and everything available that you can look at. You can customize and add those things in if you want to at some point, right? The one I want to show you in here, this deals with the idea of add notes. And so on the very far right-hand side of the menu choice, we got several different choices here. Here's the one for notes. So where I bring up notes, and let's bring up a customer here. Let's see here, accounts receivable, customers. So let me close this first. So if I bring up customer 1200, right? You notice on here is that it automatically pops up the notes dialog. I can take a look at the notes. We see that Ronald has disputed an invoice regarding 1234 invoice, and you can add new ones in there, delete ones. You can set them so that they will expire at a certain date with all these. The other one on here on our web screens, that gives you the ability to customize fields, and by customizing fields, you can remove fields, labels in the web screens you don't use, resize them, and screen them. Let's take a quick look at this one here as an example. Let's close that one down. So if I go to my options here, okay, you see on here you have the ability to customize. Okay, and this is the customize that lets you, as I said, remove fields, add fields to here on your different screens. So we can use that. The other thing that's added on here is basically we can change our text size. So right now, if you want to get fit more on the screen, we can quickly change the size of the text and everything from this particular case large here. We'll go all the way down to small. So now I can just basically fit more in the screen without less scrolling and everything that I would need. Okay. So okay, other items on here. We talked quickly, yeah, basically customize fields just gives you just some additional information here. So in this example here, we've got the invoice entry screen. Okay, so in this particular case, in terms of AR customer entry screen, if we don't want to enter descriptions as an example, entry descriptions, we can basically take that out of the screen, free that space up for that. Okay. And so this is an example where after we removed it, you no longer see that description field in here anymore, right? You see that the form has been trimmed down quite a lot to only focus on the fields that we really need to add in here. So that makes life easier in here. Okay. The other one on here too is now on these web screens, you have the ability to also add custom reports. Now, what's the difference between that and the reports that come with Sage 300? Okay, well, a custom report would be a report that you have basically added in. So here it says add report link. That's where you do it. So these would be reports that you've written that are not standard with Sage 300 that you may customize for your specific business and so on. Okay. And in this particular case, you can basically add these for them to basically appear and to run, right? How should I say that? This would be similar to on the Sage 300 desktop side. So as an example here, if you want to, you can add also custom reports on here too. I can go new and I can add report. And I can add a report on here that's customized, and this is basically the web version of that. Okay. Now, the next couple of topics we'll get to are for those people sometimes, which is this is maybe a bit more advanced for the advanced users. People use our utilities called db dump and db load to get data in and out of the system. And sometimes with very large data sets, what happens is that it takes a long time to load, and you may only need information for some specific modules. Okay, so if you want to shorten the time to do that, what you can do is you can rename the extensions of the data fields that you don't need. So, as an example, if all I'm interested in is taking a look at, let's take a look at an example here. At things dealing with AR, and I don't need my AP as an example. Here is what a typical photo structure looks like when I do a dump of my data. And what I would do here essentially is I would rename all these AP files with this and change the extension from REC to something else. Okay, and that way, what happens? It just bypasses the loading of that particular module. If you don't need this, it speeds up that, right? Okay, some more stuff on here. Well, okay, so we encounter this once in a while. And this is the issue it deals with, well, what happens if your database goes bad now? And for whatever reason, it always seems to be our folks in support will get a call on a Friday afternoon that someone's trying to has a problem with their database, or they restored a backup from way back when, and there's problems with that. And it just so happens that on a Monday is when the auditors are coming in to do the audit for the financial year end. Okay, coincidence? I don't know, but for whatever reason, that seems to be a common thing. Well, how do you address this? Okay, so what you have to do is you've got to get into the SQL Management Studio. And there's a few things you need to do in there. And in this particular slide, we list out the different steps that you need to do. Okay, so the very first one, basically, you got to set it so it's a single user. And the idea for this is that no one else can use it at this time. Okay, and then basically you run this function called check database, right? And you'll change the ID of your database to the appropriate one that it might be. Then you close the query window, right? Reopen it, and then you got to put it back into multi-user so all the other people in the company can start using it. And to a large extent, this addresses many of the issues that may come up where the database gets corrupted as part of your usage. Okay, it's not a common thing, but it does happen, and this is a very quick way to address that and get around that. Well, I like to thank you for spending your time with us here. It's a bit of a brief session, but I hope that gives you some ideas of some of the different things that you can do with Sage 300 in terms of tips and tricks. If there is additional information that you may need on here, we have listed a series of different resources that's available that you can get to, and additional resources available in the different languages that we have. Okay. So, thank you for spending your time with us, and we hope to see you in some future sessions with Sage 300. Thank you very much.